Hey, I'm Bill Gross. Welcome to my Real Estate Ripoffs podcast. This episode, the latest we're going to call out, we call it big companies, corporations, associations, and organizations that rip off consumers in real estate, particularly in California. And today we're going to talk about attorneys. Now, I know, there are good ones and there are bad ones. And we're going to talk about the bad ones. They're great attorneys. In fact, the top 10% are amazing people, smart, intelligent, hardworking. 50% by definition are below average, and I would say even the bottom 90% for the most part are difficult. But the worst part is the association. I'm going to show you about how as a group they're really tearing apart our real estate market here in California. A good attorney is like hiring a former gangbanger as your security guard at your organization. It's great to have one, but you really wish you didn't need an attorney in the first place. I do think that what we've lost is the opportunity for attorneys to be good advisors and help us with business formation, but instead we're so overwhelmed with the need to avoid litigation or involved in threats of litigation that we need attorneys, and that's what the problem is. A couple axioms I've learned. Now, my father's an attorney. I work with attorneys all the time, and I work with some great ones I really appreciate working with, and even they will tell you that the worst their colleagues are the problem. A couple of things I've learned in my career in business. Number one, laws are written by attorneys for attorneys. Over 90%, I think it's 95% of politicians, congressmen, senators, state assemblies, state senators are attorneys. And they write the laws. And they typically write the laws for themselves and their organizations and their friends and their colleagues and their sympathetic organizations. And so we end up with is this organization that's self-fulfilling, creating a world of more and more powerful attorneys, more and more powerful organizations that take power away from taxpayers, citizens, and business people. And so that's the challenge. Now, California, I think, around the country is probably the worst, if not among the worst, certainly among the worst, if not the worst. And within the California, either San Francisco or LA would fight for being the worst in most forms. And one of the things that's really interesting, I've learned, for example, I'm a probate real estate agent. I focus on probate real estate, tell families when they inherit property and go through litigation for probate, avoid probate litigation, estate planning and such. One thing that's fascinating is in all 50 states, there's only one state that has probate disclosures and probate addendums built in their forms. That's California. Now, partially it's nice to have them, but it's fascinating to me is when I interview brokers around the country, they don't see the need for the forms. They put a sentence or two in, but it's because California is so litigious. We have so many lawsuits, so many attorneys filing so many different frivolous cases in many cases that we have to overprotect ourselves, and we have more and more forms, procedures, and documents, none of which customers read, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's talk about laws. Let's talk about the effect attorneys have on our business. Number one, the commission lawsuit. One jury in one state, Missouri, which most Californians have never been to. Most Americans have never been to Missouri. Nothing wrong with the state. It's a great state, but it's one of 50. That one jury, that one judge and jury pool is threatening to disrupt real estate across the entire United States. For some reason, somebody claims, I think wrongly, that because the listing agents and buyer's agents work together, that somehow the buyers or sellers are forced to overpay. And as a result, every single organization in the industry is now the subject of multiple lawsuits in multiple jurisdictions. It's kind of like going on a picnic thinking you'd enjoy yourself, being overwhelmed with ants from multiple directions. Now, that's a separate topic, and I think the whole thing is a joke. I think it's pathetic. I think it reflects poorly on America. It reflects poorly on our society. But the fact that one jury, 12 people, in one state, Missouri, with one judge, not Congress, not the majority of Congress, Senate and House, signed by the president, can change laws through the entire country. By definition, something's wrong with that, right? Every realtor is concerned about their future. Every company is hiring attorneys to get legal advice. Every company is now playing what happens if the lawsuit goes this way or that way, all because of one lawsuit, which may or may not be legitimate. I don't think it is. I think the whole thing is unwarranted, but again, it's a little deeper than we go in this topic, number one. Number two, the general climate of lawsuits is destroying California. There is a process in California called PAGA, where we literally empower employees as state attorney generals so they can sue to defend themselves. Now, we don't allow citizens to sue criminals. We don't allow this in any other class. And what's fascinating about this is it's called the California Private Attorney General's Act, where Californians decided to empower citizens to act as attorney generals and sue employers. And so as a result of this, there's a statistic, 25% of all fast food restaurants are now victims of these PAGA lawsuits because it's just so simple to file. And the real sad part about this is if you read the law, 75% of the money goes to the legal fees and only 20% of the penalties end up in the employee's pocket. So for all of this has really just become another, in California, another kind of attorney job reform bill to give attorneys the opportunity to create a whole industry around suing employers by empowering employees to bring lawsuits, and in many cases frivolous. There are some legitimate ones. But the number of cases as a result, if you look at there's a chart here, look at the number of cases. What are the businesses seeing this kind of climb from 2017 over doubling? We haven't doubled car sales. We haven't doubled home sales. We haven't doubled, but we've doubled the number of lawsuits brought against employers in California. That we've doubled. So there's an active business in California. Successful business growth is in suing your employers. Part of the problem, if you really want to get into what's the source, is law schools are increasingly becoming mills for creating social justice warriors whose role in life is to sue somebody with money. Because how do you pay for yourself? Well, either you serve customers and create value and get paid. That's what good attorneys do. Or you work for organizations that sucks blood from other organizations, and that's what bad attorneys do. So for example, and I'm an affiliate member of the American Bar Association to learn about my business and probate and estate planning. I belong, and I get the American Bar Association Journal. I was shocked when I read the article about public service loan forgiveness. You know, it sounds good to forgive loans. You know, I don't know. You can debate is it good or bad. When you read these case studies, these are talking about, they're trying to highlight how good they are. To me, they're horrific. These nice people, nothing wrong with them. They went through life and they went to law school. This is one case, she had over $320,000. The loan evaporated because she went to work for a public justice nonprofit, which is a misnomer, organization. $300,000, that's like winning the lottery. And so what's happened is the federal government now is subsidizing nonprofit law firms who just sue organizations. We're basically paying their salaries. They can underpay the salary by getting law school graduates and then forgive their debts. Here's one who got $300,000. Here's one $322,000 in her case. Here's another one over $255,000. And all these are people who only work for the social justice warrior machine whose job in life is to sue somebody doing something. Now, are there people who are victims? Yes. Is the problem in America we have too many victims and not enough successful business? I don't think so. I think that's why our economy is in the state that it is. And so we now have a federal government that is basically paying for the law education and indoctrination of attorneys to do one thing, to empower the government to sue citizens and citizens organizations. And this is a tidal wave that's coming. I don't think people realize if you're happy with the state of school system in California, good for you. If you're not happy with what's happening in high schools, if you're not happy with what's happening in colleges, if you're not happy with what's happening in graduate school, wait to see the effect of this indoctrination and the hiring of 80% of law students in America. There's an army being built who are going to attack every institution, organization. That's their mindset, and that's the financial incentives that they're being given to consider that. And it is going to continue. And I'm going to tell you, that is the wave people aren't watching for going forward. Now, I often talk to attorneys who put down real estate agents. I've been in this business 38 years. I've sold thousands of properties. And I routinely have an attorney who maybe sold in his life 1 or 2 or 3 properties and been involved in 10 or 20 transactions tell me how real estate works. One thing about attorneys is a general rule, again, accepting the good ones. There's no group of people who sound more like they know what they're talking about and know less than attorneys on average. The great attorneys are humble. They listen, they ask questions, they want to learn, or they're experienced. But too many, I think, will put down real estate agents as being unprofessional and hold up attorneys. What I found fascinating, I did a little research. As a real estate agent, in order to continue my license, every 3 years, I need 45 hours of Department of Real Estate approved continuing education. So it's about 15 hours a year I need as a realtor. Any idea what attorneys require? In California, in 3 years, 25 hours. So as a real estate agent, I'm spending 45 hours, and an attorney who has way more power is 25 hours. I found that fascinating. Even 25 hours a year for the increased powers they have for people. I find that fascinating. And the reality is most of the, I should say at least a quarter, is DEI and things that are not related to providing the service of law to customers. And I don't know if you want to talk about anti-discrimination and how to treat people fairly and ethically, those are important things. But I'm just saying the average attorney spends very little time, as at least required. What I have found is the great attorneys, they go to conferences all the time. Yes, they get credit for them, but they want to learn to be experts in their craft. And they take their time being educated seriously. The top of the top, write papers, make presentations, engage in conferences, engage in committees and debate the subjects. But the vast majority, 90%, do nothing other than the minimum required. And that's why so many of them really aren't, I think, experienced. So what happens? Well, as real estate agents, what we find out is we are left with the pieces of being sued. We have the commission lawsuit I mentioned. We have landlords. This is an interesting one. Anybody who has ever rented a property, I rarely in my career have come across truly a tenant who's being abused by his landlord. Now, it's true. There are landlords who let properties run down because the cost of management and the cost of getting tenants in, after all the ripoffs and the evictions, all the costs, some of them just give up along the way. But way more frequently, I find tenants who are abusing the system all the time in my real estate career. One of the things people don't know is you probably could not be a tenant facing eviction and go to eviction court and not be offered at least one free legal service company to represent you. It is amazing to me how the hallways of the court system are jammed with people offering free legal advice for tenants. The reason why is they get paid through penalties and fines and things like that, as well as there's a nonprofit aspect that these organizations get paid. But that's not bad enough. Here in Los Angeles, we have the quote mansion tax, Measure ULA, where we charge the rich for selling their mansions. Now what happens is the rich sell less mansions, so we get less taxes, we get less property taxes, less transfer taxes, less everything else. And the city agreed to spend $58 million of the mansion tax to support proposals for tenant protections, basically taking money from the sale of property to hire attorneys who are already getting paid through nonprofits. So basically what we've now done is the city of LA is giving money back to donors by paying the nonprofit. So nonprofit doesn't have to pay anymore, so the donors keep the money and work on some other program. Of course, those laws were written by politicians who are attorneys. So when you look at the business climate in Los Angeles, we have an economy that's struggling. We have more and more lawsuits. We have more and more challenges on rental property because of tenant protections and deadbeat tenants and tenants not paying their properties. And overall, a difficult economy. But here's what I'm going to tell you. It's going to get a lot worse until there's a pushback. So at the end of the day, what should you do? Well, you need great legal advice. If you're involved in a real estate transaction, you're involved in a business, you're involved in probate or estate planning, you want the best to support you. But as a taxpayer, as a voter, be aware that the industry of the legal profession is one by one destroying our city and our state. And at some point, we might be at a tipping point. I don't know. Maybe we'll continue to, we'll recover somehow. Maybe there'll be pushback. But I think that pushback starts with us as taxpayers and us as business people. So again, let's hold the attorneys accountable. The last thing I'm going to say, I literally get called all the time by real estate agents with problems on different cases. And I don't give legal advice, but I do give business advice on probate cases. For example, I had one realtor call me up and say, why is it that they can't accept the offer? The attorney's saying it's below 90%. The appraised value by the court was 9% the sales price was below 9% of the price reviewed by the probate attorney. The probate referee will not listen to the fact the property is uninhabitable, the property is in bad condition, and want to adjust down the appraisal inventory report. And I looked at the case, I said, well, your client has full authority. And if everybody's in agreement, if you notice everybody, don't notice a proposed action, you don't need to sell it at 90%. And the realtor came back and said, well, the attorney agreed with that assessment. He said it's his practice to require 90% to protect the client. And I said, well, how does it protect the client? I just asked the question, how does it protect the client? If everybody signs off on it, right? If there's no other heirs complaining and they all agree that that's the best price you can get, they agree on the condition. If you disclose that you tried to get the report approved, but the probate referee wouldn't adjust the price for whatever reason, why would that protect the customer? And the answer is it really doesn't. You know, only in probate referees appraisals can they take 60 days to get the report. For a drive-by appraisal at best, most of the time when a probate referee does a report, I don't know what the rules are supposed to be, but my experience is they don't even drive by. They don't even offer photos, even though many charge for photos. I'll ask for copies of them, I never get them. Or they'll get them to me a few days later. Maybe they didn't have them at the time. So what I want to say is we have these rules that are written by attorneys for attorneys, and we have to use common sense. We have to ask questions. We have to take responsibility for a business and not allow any profession, I don't care who it is, a doctor, an attorney, a teacher, a real estate agent. You should ask questions. You should have answers that are explained to you that make sense. As a consumer, you should pick good service and demand it from your providers. If not, fire them and pick somebody else, whether you're realtors or attorneys. But at the end of the day, I think most people will find that not their particular attorney on in one case, but in general, the Association of Attorneys are a tremendous drag on the economy and the life here in Los Angeles and California, and we as consumers have to push back. What do you think? Again, I love a lot of attorneys. I can give you names of a lot that I love. But give me your feedback. Put a comment in, like it, don't like it, thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm open either way. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.